I'm gonna be like a hard goddamn core perfectionist on this. I know I am. What's up, guys? This is Jason, and this is Pro Wrestling Fix. Saw my first pro wrestling match in 1982, so yes, I'm old. Been in love with it since the first time that I ever saw it. It's the thing in my life that I'm probably the most passionate about. This is my very first video. In this first video, we're about 30 some odd days away from WrestleMania, which is taking place in Dallas, Texas. I happen to live in Dallas, Texas. Am I gonna go to WrestleMania? That's up in the air right now. The ticket prices are not cheap, and I'm just a regular guy. It's about a 50-50 on that. I would love to. Never been to one. What today's video is going to be about is this year's WrestleMania card. What about it I like, what about it I don't like, an overall analysis of that kind of thing. The first thing that we have, which is looking like it's going to be the main event, is going to be Triple H defending the WWE World Heavyweight Championship against Roman Reigns. Right off the bat, I think that's a terrible main event. I just feel like there's a lot of dynamics with that don't make up a good WrestleMania main event. We'll start off with Triple H. Triple H is a quality heel. He is the type of a guy that can do a lot to help Roman Reigns get over as the top babyface that they obviously want him to be. But it's the year 2016. Triple H was in the main event of WrestleMania in the year 2000. 16 years ago. I'm sorry, but the guy should not be main eventing a WrestleMania at this point. I would say the same, for any of the part-time guys, Undertaker, Rock, anybody that they wanted to bring back that was a top star around that time. I just feel like there's no need for guys like that in the WrestleMania main event. That being said, Triple H, I'm sure, will hold up his end of the bargain. What I feel like is a big problem here is that because he's a part-time wrestler now, he's not going to be relevant in storylines going forward as far as actually competing in ring. This is a problem I feel like WrestleMania has had for years now, is they bring in all of these part-time guys for these big matches, but then they're gone the next day. That's not conducive to good long-term booking, in my opinion. Now, Roman Reigns, which it's the fashionable thing to bash Reigns right now. My personal opinion, I wanted to like the dude. I really did. I thought he was good in his role in the Shield. When he did his big spots, did his it was entertaining. I felt like he had a great look. I still think he has a good look. He's clearly the guy that Vince McMahon wants, as seems to be the heir apparent to John Cena. When he got out on his own, he started becoming exposed for shortcomings that he had that really just kind of prevent him from being the top guy. As much as Vince McMahon wants him to be, there's just certain weaknesses that he has that make me feel like that's not going to be a possibility anytime soon. Among these weaknesses, his character, which is virtually non-existent. He's just kind of there. He doesn't have anything about him that stands out as a character, in my opinion. There's nothing you can look at and say, oh, well, Roman Reigns, when I hear his name, the first thing I think of is this, in terms of character. His in-ring work, it's competent, and I feel like, he's made strides in that category, but he's not the kind of a guy that's going to go out there and wrestle a 4 or 5 star match. I just don't think that's within him, at least not at this point. To be fair to him, that's something that I would have said about Cena previously, and Cena can now give him the right opponent. He can go 4 and 5 stars, depending on who he's wrestling. Reigns' moveset also just drives me crazy because his big moves, the spear, I think it's a weak finishing move. I've always thought that. I could buy it as a finisher from Goldberg because Goldberg was built like a tank. Ironically, Goldberg didn't use it as a finisher. It was the setup to his actual finisher, the jackhammer. I somewhat bought it from Rhino also because of the intensity that Rhino did the move with. Reigns, I don't feel it. It just doesn't seem like a real finisher. The Superman punch, it's kind of lame. It's like his version of Cena's You Can't See Me. The apron drop kick, it's somewhat cool. It's not like a holy shit, look at this move type of a thing. We also have his pedestrian ability on the mic. I haven't seen a promo from Reigns that I really was like, hey, that was very good. He nailed that. I admit, I'm sure I've missed some of them. Between my work schedule, personal life, I don't get to watch every single show. I'll watch as much as I can. I've also not read anything that leads me to believe that Reigns has had any promos whatsoever that just really stood out. Triple H versus Reigns. I expect it to be a competent WrestleMania main event. I'm sure they'll perform fairly well. I look at it to be that it can be somewhere around the 3-star, 3.5-star range. Not bad for your average match. For the main event of WrestleMania, to me that doesn't cut it. There's also the issue with the hardcore wrestling fans, the internet wrestling community, whatever you want to call us, pretty much reject Reigns for the most part, and I anticipate AT&T Stadium rebelling against Reigns pretty hardcore. And should he win the match, which I expect him to, I think he's going to get booed out of the stadium. Will that be enough to kind of wake Vince McMahon up and realize they either need to turn him heel or they need to do something different? I doubt it, because Vince McMahon is a hard-headed, stubborn fuck. That's the way that I anticipate it going down. For the record, I think that this could have been a really nice addition to the WrestleMania card, just as a grudge match, possibly with some sort of stipulation, something like that. That would have been fine. Positioning it as the World Heavyweight Championship match and the main event, I think, is just not a good idea. Next up, The Undertaker, whose opponent, well, there was big speculation as to who it was going to be. Evidently, it was supposed to be John Cena, who is currently hurt, rehabbing a shoulder injury that he's supposed to be out 8-9 months. Shockingly, he didn't return in 2 months to make it to WrestleMania. Plan B for the WWE is The Undertaker versus Shane McMahon in Hell in a Cell. From everything I've heard, people are going kind of bonkers over Shane McMahon returning. I would not put myself in that camp. I think it's cool. Shane can be entertaining, and he hasn't been around in 6-7 years, something like that. So initially, there's interest, as far as I'm concerned, for him returning. I'm not a fan of The Undertaker versus Shane McMahon at WrestleMania. When it boils right down to it, Shane McMahon's not a wrestler. He's the boss's son. He has wrestled. He's got a lot of balls. He has done some of the craziest stunts in WWE history, but ultimately he's not a wrestler. The storyline with this whole thing really seems screwed up to me. Shane returns and says that he wants control of Monday Night Raw. It seemed like Vince basically said that's okay, as long as you wrestle one match. I choose who it's against, I choose where it's at, and he chose WrestleMania, and he chose The Undertaker. It was widely speculated, well, what's The Undertaker going to say about this? And then he came out on Raw and basically just said, well, Vince, your son's blood is on your hands, but really kind of just went along with it, which doesn't really, to me, doesn't really fit. I feel like The Undertaker should just pretty much tell Vince McMahon to fuck off. So I feel like the storyline is really screwy. Another thing that I feel like I haven't heard this from anywhere, but okay, The Undertaker I think is 50 now. For a 50-year-old dude, he's still a hell of a performer. Overall, his days of having those epic matches with the likes of Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, those days I think are behind him. And then you got Shane, who I think is 45, 46, something along those lines. He hasn't been in a wrestling ring in a competitive capacity for 7 years, and the guy wasn't a regular wrestler before that. I think this match could be a potential train wreck. I'm assuming this is going to be one that they're going to really rehearse, really get their spots down, but I think that's really all it's going to be. It's just a big collection of spots. It could be entertaining. I don't want to say that it can't. I'm sure people have thought already, you know, is Shane going to take a bump off the cell? You know, what kind of crazy shit do they have lined up so far? I am more interested in it than I am Reigns versus Triple H. Something about it doesn't click for me. That could be personal preference. I'm old school. I still wanted to see The Undertaker versus Sting. I think Sting's health wouldn't permit that anyway. I don't know that Vince would have even booked it if it could have. And of course that match should have happened years ago if it was ever going to. I would have liked The Undertaker to actually wrestle another wrestler. In my opinion, if they would have actually put some effort into building up Kevin Owens, into building up, I would say Bray Wyatt, but they already had The Undertaker shit on him last year. There's a number of younger, talented guys that would have benefited greatly from working with The Undertaker at WrestleMania and possibly even getting a victory over the dude. It just doesn't seem like WWE is interested in that kind of thing. Brings me to the third match of Brock Lesnar versus Dean Ambrose. Street fight. To me, this seems like they're very obviously trying to get Ambrose over as the takes a hellacious ass beating and still won't quit babyface, and it seems to be working for the most part. Ambrose doesn't click for me as a face, really. I'm familiar with his work as Jon Moxley in the Independents, and the guy was a fantastic heel. I'm still waiting for that solo heel run, so I guess him as a babyface is not my cup of tea. It seems weird for him to fight Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, honestly, because I think that Ambrose has not over the past year or really ever been portrayed as a full-time main event guy. For that reason, him against Lesnar just strikes me as not as big of a matchup as what Lesnar possibly could have. To me, Lesnar, it's like he has that main event aura. Anybody fighting him needs to have that same kind of aura surrounding them. I don't get it from Ambrose. Again, I think that the match could be entertaining. Ambrose is probably going to get dissected pretty bad. I don't anticipate Ambrose winning the match. My level of interest in that, scale of 1 to 10, I'll call it maybe a 6, 7. Those evidently are the top 3 matches for this year's WrestleMania. In WWE's defense, which you'll see in the course of my videos, I'll bash WWE a lot, and I think a lot of times they deserve it, but I'll stick up for them or give them praise when I feel like it's called for. In their defense, this year they're battling a shitload of injuries. It would have been Undertaker Cena, which would have been, I'm sure, a huge draw. Those guys have been surefire main eventers together for the last 10 plus years and never wrestled each other. They did wrestle when Cena was a heel on SmackDown back in 2003, but that's a different John Cena than the one that's around right now. I think that would have been a great draw. Seth Rollins, who was pretty much carrying the WWE's main event scene, is injured, can't compete this year. I think he could have been a potential opponent for Triple H this year, and Rollins more or less makes everything good. He's just that good in the ring. Randy Orton is also out this year. I'm sure he would have been prominently involved. They've had to switch some things around. Understandable. With that being said, I'm underwhelmed by the current WrestleMania card, especially considering, I'm familiar with AT&T Stadium. I've been there to watch football games. The place is immaculate. It's massive. I don't know how many people it's actually going to hold for WrestleMania. I think it holds 100,000 for football. This card so far does not scream 100,000 fan event to me. I think it's also been confirmed, by the way, for a 4th match. Charlotte versus Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch for the Divas Championship. I think that's the right move as far as who to have involved in that match. These are the 3 women that came up from NXT last summer, started the whole Diva Revolution thing, which was kind of a mess. That's for another video. I think it's pretty safe to say the 3 of them can put together a WrestleMania caliber type of a match. You know, no complaints about that. That one I look forward to checking that out. And you know, it may surprise some people how good it can actually be. From what I've heard, rumor wise, we may have the New Day against the League of Nations for the tag team titles. That does nothing for me. This could be attempting to position the New Day as faces, which is alright because people cheer them most of the time now anyway, and they're pretty damn entertaining. The League of Nations, though, is just like a fucking black hole of... They're just not interesting, not entertaining. It's like they threw all these dudes together because they're all foreigners. It actually probably would work a lot better if Wade Barrett was, like, in charge of it, because he's the only dude out of the four that really displays much personality. But right now, that stable just seems dead on arrival. I don't think that I'm really going to ultimately wind up giving a fuck about that tag team title match. It's rumored an Intercontinental title, multi-person match, Kevin Owens defending, possibly a ladder match. I think that will be obviously really entertaining. Just off the top of my head, guys that potentially could compete in that. Right away I'm thinking AJ Styles, Dolph Ziggler, potentially. I'd like to see Luke Harper in it. I think he's by far the best worker in the Wyatt family, but I kind of think he's going to be in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. From what I understand, it's rumored that Sami Zayn may get called up from NXT. Story fits perfectly for him to be involved in that match with his longtime rivalry with Kevin Owens. If he gets called up, I mean, I honestly might be more interested in that match than anything else on the show. Those multi-person car crash ladder matches are always fun, so I'm okay with that. I would have liked to seen Owens defend the Intercontinental title against AJ Styles. Honestly, I don't think anybody else in a position higher on the card would have wanted to see that, because those two guys would have stolen the show, and nobody in the top three matches could fucking follow that. Either A, they would have to wrestle a match that was not up to their standards, or B, they just can't have the match. The Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, I understand that's probably going to be back. The early rumor is it's going to be won by Braun Strowman, the big Wyatt family klutz. So apparently he's a big project of Vince McMahon's. I hear rumors that he's possibly going to fight Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. What a horrible fucking idea. Supposedly, he can do some things that haven't been seen on TV or whatever. Well, what has been seen on TV is not very much, so I don't have much faith in a big push for that dude really going anywhere. Sometimes I'm a pessimist about what WWE's doing, but frequently I think that that's pretty justified, because I've seen WWE take many a sure thing and completely fucking ruin it. That's kind of why that is, but this time I'm hoping that they surprise me. But ultimately, the WrestleMania card, I can't say anything about it like supremely excites me. If I don't get to go to WrestleMania, this is how sad this is. I've been a professional wrestling fan for 35 years. Love it. With that being said, if I don't get to go to this WrestleMania, it's not even going to hurt my feelings that bad. I'll watch it on the network and kind of expect it to be a dud. Oh, they're probably also going to load up with The Rock, Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley. I think they've talked to Batista. All of these motherfuckers from the past. I respect them all. Their contributions should definitely be heralded. But this is why they can't produce a consistently compelling product, because they cannot get out of the fucking past. It's alright to have maybe one or two guys at WrestleMania in key roles. I don't think those roles should necessarily be wrestling. And for those guys, I'm sure it won't be, but they're probably going to take up a whole lot of airtime doing whatever the hell they're doing. Meanwhile, you have all these people, Kevin Owens, Dolph Ziggler, Wade Barrett, Cody Rhodes, Damian Sandow, any of the three members of the New Day, Neville, the list goes on, of guys that are ready to be top flight guys right fucking now. And they just kind of let them sit off to the side and atrophy and get to the point where it's hard for it, you know, if they were to try to push any of these guys right now, it's hard for people to take it seriously because they've been booked to look like fucking garbage for a long time. That's going to be it for this video right now. I do want to let you guys know, I have been watching professional wrestling for 35 years. WWE, WCW, ECW, Ring of Honor, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, anything old school, AWA, Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm from Texas, so World Class Championship Wrestling. Used to go watch it live all the time. UWF, everything like that. I'm familiar to some extent with all of it. If you guys want to ask me a question in the comments for this video, or get my opinion on anything having to do with pro wrestling, I'll be happy to answer your question in a video. Just be cool. That's it for video number 1. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time. I felt like I was just rambling. That's fucked up.